Something touched me deep inside the day the music died. The music died certainly in the city of Tampa yesterday. Two 31-year-old police officers leave behind a widow with four boys under 9 and another expecting their very first child in 2 weeks. The day the music died, some of you might recognize that. Anybody rock and roll aficionados? John, do you know where that's from?
Yeah, I believe that's when the airplane crashed. Buddy Holly and
Yep. Right. Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, Ritchie Valens, died on January 3rd, 1959, along with a 28-year-old pilot in a field in Iowa. And Don McLean, in 1982, composed that song. And it was about the day the music died, because he looked back on Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper as really being at the forefront of rock and roll music. Well, the music dies in our lives, in each of our lives, in many different ways. And we're never really prepared for that call that comes in the middle of the night when we least expect it. And on August 16th, 1984, I was sitting at my desk at Fifth Avenue in the bank. I worked in the bank at that time. And all of a sudden, my phone rang. Hi, Tina, are you all right? I don't know how to tell you this, but Eddie's dead. What happened? Richie's neighbor, Faye, just called me. He was shot and killed on his front lawn. That was the day after my nephew's 22nd birthday. And it's a murder that happened in 1984. There was 18,694 of them in the United States. And I didn't think about it a whole lot in terms of my outlook about capital punishment, because I certainly believed after Eddie's murder that if it was a firing squad, I could shoot that gun. If it was an electric chair, I could pull the lever of whomever did that to my nephew. In 1986, my brother was actually quoted in the New York Times, and the article was, "The torment that's left for those left behind to mourn." And it talked about unsolved murders and how that even exacerbates the anger and the anguish that you feel when you lose someone. But I joined Toastmasters a long time ago. In 1997, I was at the Mad Toastmasters in New York City. It was mad not because it was crazy people like me, but because it was on Madison Avenue in New York City, and that's where we met. And I had to come up at that time, I think it was maybe my 3rd speech. And sometimes you come up with your 1st or your 2nd speech when you're new to Toastmasters, and then all of a sudden you're saying, geez, what the heck am I going to talk about? I got to get to 7 minutes? What am I going to talk about? But I remember reading November 12th, 1996, about Brian Grossberg and Amy Grossberg and Brian Peterson. They were two 18-year-olds in Newark, Delaware, and what they had done, or what they had been accused of doing, was murdering their newborn child, just throwing this little baby boy, in a trash bin. They ended up both testifying against each other. They ended up he served 2 years in jail, and she served 2.5 years. But what was interesting is, at the time the murder took place, these two young people could have been charged with a capital crime and faced the death penalty. And the Attorney General of the state of Delaware had to decide whether to bring those charges or not. That changed my whole outlook about capital punishment, because I didn't think that's what it was intended for. And had it happened 50 miles north in Newark, New Jersey, it never would have been death penalty eligible. How does this relate to Toastmasters? Well, John Wooden said, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. The great professor, the basketball coach who led UCLA to 10 titles, is now known more for the philosophy and the advice he gave to players than necessarily what he taught them on the basketball court. And when I look back on my whole Toastmaster experience, I realized that the opportunity to deliver a speech really got my creative juices flowing, allowed me to look maybe a little bit more differently or perceptively at my beliefs. And it's something that I was able to incorporate into presentations that I do on my job. On Friday, I'm going to be speaking to the Kiwanis Club in Bartow, and I'm thinking I might start with "Something Touched Me Deep Inside the Day the Music Died." Or maybe I'll use something from Helen Keller, "The best and most beautiful things in the world can't be seen or even touched. They must be felt within the heart. But I realized that if it were not for Toastmasters, I wouldn't feel all that comfortable. And the reason why I continue at Toastmasters is because I love to watch people grow as speakers. I love to try to give a really good evaluation and give concrete suggestions rather than saying, hey, you were terrific and I can't wait till your next speech. You know, we really want to challenge people, and I've seen people in this club grow. Brian is so much more comfortable out here. Chris, having a challenge, a hearing challenge, and yet still coming out here and speaking from the heart. John Hobbs, who we knew when we first saw him that he had a lot of information, but he's much more comfortable delivering it. Arnie, I mean, look at this guy, how fancy he dresses for the graduation today. And Cynthia, I never yet found anybody in Toastmasters that can do a 5-minute table topic like Cynthia Molina. What I'd like to do is, I'd like to learn to pause. People have been telling me that for 13 or 14 years. Pause. Stop once in a while. Other things that I'd like to do, I'd like to try vocal variety one day. That's something that I've been trying to do. What's amazing is you might find yourself, you might be saying, geez, I'm not really advancing all that much. My 4th speech was not much better than my 3rd speech. But keep at it, because the fact is you will be a much more powerful communicator if you stay riveted to Toastmasters, if you allow yourself to grow, if you don't necessarily compare yourself to other people in the club, but compare yourself to the other you that you were when you started out. It's what you learn after you know it all that counts. For 25 years, I would send flowers. My nephew's birthday, or the day after his birthday, the day he was murdered, my wife and I would send a dozen roses to my brother Richie and to my sister-in-law Carol. And that's changed. We don't do it so much anymore. It was about 8 years ago that Gail, the youngest of their 4 children, confided in my wife. And what's amazing is when I look back on our wedding day, Carol had a little bump. She was pregnant with Gail. She was the matron of honor, and my brother was my best man. And Gail confided in Tina that when she was 2 and 3 years old, for a period of time, her brother Eddie had molested her. And when I heard that news, it was as if I heard the news all over again of Eddie's murder. He's a young man that he had great potential, and just like 18,694 other people that year. And what's interesting is, in 2004, there were 16,137 cases of murder or non-negligent manslaughter in the United States. Because 37.4% of these cases were uncleared, around 6,035 people got away with murder. This, of course, assumes each offender murdered only one person, which very likely isn't true. We live in a very violent country, and what's interesting is when you pick up the newspaper in the morning and you look and you say, oh, 2 police officers shot. It's something that gives you a moment to pause and you read the article. But when you read the article, 22-year-old Central Islip young man found shot. When all of a sudden the story is about someone in your life, your whole view of the world changes. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a view that remains riveted in revenge or bringing consequences to what happened. It's what you learn after you know it all that matters. And here in Toastmasters, every day, every meeting I come to, I'm learning something new. It's great to be a part of this club, and I encourage you all to be here next year at this time. Toastmasters, we often measure how many new people did we get. We don't want to lose any one of you. We can all continue to grow. We can all continue to help each other. And you don't have to dress as fancy as our new incoming president. Mr. Toastmaster.